Gemini 3.5 Pro, GPT-5.6 Terra, and Claude Sonnet 5 all claim to be the coding agent you should build on. So I ran every official price sheet, model card, and independent benchmark I could find against each other, side by side. The biggest surprise isn't which one scores highest, it's that one of these three isn't even a real product yet. It's a closed beta with no public API and no shipped pricing. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which one you can actually build on today, and which one you're just waiting on. Let's start with the number that decides whether your monthly bill is sane or terrifying. Cost per million tokens. According to official docs, GPT 5.6 Terra charges $2 per million input tokens and $12 per million output tokens, and that output price is already a cut. It dropped from a higher launch price on July 30th. Claude Sonnet 5 also charges $2 gas per million input tokens, but its output price sits lower at $10 per million, and Anthropic is treating that as a permanent intro price, not a temporary promo. Gemini 3.5 Pro has no published pricing at all. I couldn't find an official figure anywhere, so it sits out this test entirely. On the surface, Claude Sonnet 5 wins output pricing outright. 10 points are against GPT 5.6, Terra's $12. But here's the catch, and it's community reported, but unverified. Claude Sonnet 5 shipped with a new tokenizer that maps the same piece of text to somewhere between 1.0 and 1.35 times more tokens than its predecessor. That means the sticker price of 10 per million doesn't tell the whole story, because you're generating more tokens to say the same thing. Once you account for that, GPT 5.6 Terra's effective cost per character can end up cheaper than Claude Sonnet 5's, despite the higher listed rate. So GPT 5.6 Terra takes this test. Gemini 3.5 Pro simply isn't scoreable here. No published number means no comparison. At 500,000 output tokens a month, that works out to roughly 6 hours before any caching discounts. And that's before Claude Sonnet 5's tokenizer inflation even enters the picture. I pulled the official pricing pages and model cards from OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google myself, then cross-checked every benchmark against independent runs from Vellum, Poyo, and Artificial Analysis. So nothing here is vendor spin without a label on it. Cost only matters if the model can actually do the job, so let's look at coding benchmarks, and this is where GPT 5.6 Terra starts to separate itself. On Terminal Bench 2.1, GPT 5.6 Terra scores 87.4%, according to community-reported testing, while Claude Sonnet 5 comes in at 80.4% on the same harness. That's a real gap, 7 points on a benchmark built to test agentic terminal work specifically. One of the biggest problems I run into when using AI agents is turning their output into YouTube content I can actually use to market my product. That's why this video is sponsored by Subscriber, a tool that helps business owners connect their AI agents to YouTube and market their products without spending 10 hours every week creating content. You can connect Claude or ChatGPT directly to Subscriber. It then analyzes your business, website, and YouTube channel to help you create SEO-optimized video ideas, scripts, thumbnails, and even complete videos that actually match your brand. What I like most is that every week, Subscriber gives me a list of high-potential video ideas I can immediately execute, and it can even help edit videos for me, with or without my face, including videos like the one you're watching right now. It's easy to get started, and you can try Subscriber for free using the link in the description below. Now back to the video. On SWE Bench Pro, the margin tightens to nearly nothing. GPT 5.6 Terra scores 63.4%, Claude Sonnet 5 scores 63.2%. That's a dead heat, a 0.2 of a point difference that I wouldn't call decisive on its own. Where Claude Sonnet 5 pulls ahead is SWE Bench Verified, where it posts a range of 80% to 85.2%. Community reported and methodology dependent, but it's the only one of the three with any published figure on that specific benchmark at all. GPT 5.6 Terra has no comparable number there, and neither does Gemini 3.5 Pro. So here's how I'm scoring it. GPT 5.6 Terra wins the category overall because it leads clearly on Terminal Bench, ties essentially on SWE Bench Pro, and even shows up ahead of Claude Sonnet 5 by a wide 39-5 margin on Goldie Bench. Claude Sonnet 5's SWE Bench verified win is real. but it's a single benchmark against a broader lead. Gemini 3.5 Pro has no official numbers at all, so it can't be scored here, full stop. Gemini 3.5 Pro's only number here is an estimated 54.2%, and I want to be clear, that's not a measured result, it's a third-party estimate with no official testing behind it. A model that codes well but makes you wait is a model that breaks your workflow, so let's talk speed. GPT-5.6 Terra streams output at 119 to 149 tokens per second, according to community-reported testing. Claude Sonnet 5 streams at 61 to 84 tokens per second on the same measure. That's roughly double the throughput for GPT-5.6 Terra, and in a real agent loop running dozens of calls, that difference compounds fast. Time to first token tells a similar story, but with a twist. GPT 5.6 Terra's TTFT ranges from 0.68 to 2.8 seconds. Claude Sonnet 5 sits at 1.85 to 2.74 seconds under normal conditions. But here's the part that matters. Because Claude Sonnet 5 runs always-on adaptive thinking, the TTFT can spike all the way up to roughly 138 seconds at max reasoning effort. Gemini 3.5 Pro has no published speed data of any kind, so once again, it's not part of this scoring. GPT 5.6 Terra wins speed clearly, roughly double the streaming rate and a far more predictable time to first token. Claude Sonnet 5's adaptive thinking is a real feature, but it makes latency a moving target instead of a fixed number. That's not a rare edge case if you're pushing the model for its hardest reasoning. That's the trade-off you're signing up for. Stick with me, because the last 4 tests are where this decision actually flips. Now let's talk about how much these models can actually hold in memory and hand back in one response, because this decides whether you're feeding it a whole codebase or chopping your project into pieces. GPT 5.6 Terra ships a 1.05 million token context window, official and confirmed. Claude Sonnet 5 ships 1 million tokens, also official and confirmed. On max output, GPT 5.6, Terra, and Claude Sonnet 5 are tied at 128,000 tokens each, both officially confirmed. Gemini 3.5 Pro shows up in some listings at 64,000 tokens, but that figure is unofficial, an aggregator listing, rather than anything Google has confirmed directly. So here's the honest call. GPT 5.6, Terra edges the context window test since 1.05 million beats Claude Sonnet 5's 1 million on a shipped basis, and the two tie outright on max, output at 128,000 tokens each. Gemini 3.5 Pro is the interesting one here, is expected to ship with a 2 million token window, double either shipped competitor, but that number is an announced target, not something you can actually use right now. Gemini 3.5 Pro's 2 million target is genuinely bigger on paper, but an announced spec isn't a shipped spec, and I'm not scoring a promise the same as a product. Here's the test that actually decides whether any of this matters for your workflow. Can you get your hands on the model at all? GPT 5.6 Terra has a live production API through the Responses API, and it's generally available on Azure and Bedrock. Claude Sonnet 5 also has a live API through Anthropic directly, and it's generally available on Bedrock, Vertex, and Azure, all 3 major clouds. Gemini 3.5 Pro has no public API. According to official docs, it's restricted to a closed beta with select partners, no GA release on any cloud platform, nothing you can build a product on today. On modality, GPT 5.6, Terra, and Claude Sonnet 5 are tied, both support audio, image, speech, text, and video on input and output. Gemini 3.5 Pro has no published modality data, so there's nothing to compare there either. This test comes down to a tie between GPT 5.6, Terra, and Claude Sonnet 5. Both fully deployable, both multimodal, both live in production right now. Gemini 3.5 Pro isn't in this race yet, it's simply not deployable anywhere. GPT 5.6 Terra wins on raw price after its July 30th cut, leads clearly on terminal bench at 87.4% against Claude Sonnet 5's 80.4%, streams roughly twice as fast, and is fully generally available across Azure and Bedrock right now. Claude Sonnet 5 counters with the lowest listed output price at 10 Cyan per million tokens and the only published SWE bench verified score of the 3, 80% to 85.2%, though its new tokenizer quietly eats into that price advantage. Gemini 3.5 Pro's only real advantage is a 2 million token context window, double what either shipped model offers, but it comes with 0 official pricing, 0 measured benchmarks, and no public API to actually use it. Now, GPT-5.6 Terra wins on raw price after its July 30th cut, leads clearly on terminal bench at 87.4% against Claude Sonnet 5's 80.4%, streams roughly twice as fast, and is fully generally available across Azure and Bedrock right now. Claude Sonnet 5 counters with the lowest listed output price at 10.8 ER per million tokens and the only published SWE bench verified score of the three, 80% to 85.2%, though its new tokenizer quietly eats into that price advantage. Gemini 3.5 Pro's only real advantage is a 2 million token context window, double what either shipped model offers, but it comes with zero official pricing, zero measured benchmarks, and no public API to actually use it. GPT 5.6 Terra wins on raw price after its July 30th cut, leads clearly on terminal bench at 87.4% against Claude Sonnet 5's 80.4%, streams roughly twice as fast, and is fully generally available across Azure and Bedrock right now. Claude Sonnet 5 counters with the lowest listed output price at 10.3 ERs per million tokens and the only published SWE bench verified score of the three, 80% to 85.2%, though its new tokenizer quietly eats into that price advantage. Gemini 3.5 Pro's only real advantage is a 2 million token context window, double what either shipped model offers, but it comes with zero official pricing, zero measured benchmarks, and no public API to actually use it. GPT 5.6 Terra is the winner here, and it's not close. It wins cost, it wins coding benchmark performance, it wins speed, it wins context and output limits, and it ties deployment and modality with Claude Sonnet 5 for a clean sweep across every dimension where a real comparison was possible. If you need a production-ready coding agent at scale, fastest, cheapest after the price cut, and available right now, GPT 5.6 Terra is your default. Claude Sonnet 5 is worth choosing specifically if the lowest sticker output price matters more to you than raw speed, and you can tolerate slower streaming and that always-on reasoning latency spike. Gemini 3.5 Pro is not a product you can build on today, it's a promise of a 2 million token context window. So if that specific number matters enough to your workflow, wait for a GA release, but don't put it in production based on an unreleased beta. Here's what the pricing page doesn't tell you. Claude Sonnet 5's headline 10.0 GRAs per million output tokens looks like the cheapest option on this list, and technically it is. But that number doesn't account for its new tokenizer mapping the same text to 1.0 to 1.35 times more tokens than before, community reported but unverified. So the real effective cost per character you're generating is closer to 30 GRAs or 50 per million once you factor that in, not the 10.0 headline everyone quotes. That's the kind of detail that changes your actual bill and never shows up in the comparison chart. If you want to see how these same three models handle a real multi-file coding task instead of just benchmark tables, that breakdown is coming next, so stick around for that one.